Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. My name's Owen Travers. I'm a 34-year-old commercial electrician from Erie, Pennsylvania. Before everything changed, my world was simple. Wake up at 6:15 a.m., coffee with 2 sugars. Pull on my gray coveralls. Then it was wires, panels, and voltage meters until dark. I lived alone in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on West 10th Street, a stone's throw from Frontier Park and a short drive to the bayfront. Quiet place. Safe. Or so I thought. The first sign that something was wrong came on a Tuesday, March 18th. I remember the date clearly because it was the last day I felt like a regular human being. I was working a maintenance job at the UPMC Hamlet Medical Center, fixing a fault in the emergency stairwell lighting on the south wing. Normally, when you're crawling through a hospital's electrical backbone, it's just the hum of the ballasts and the occasional radio call from the maintenance chief. That day, though, I heard something different. It was a scream, short, muffled, coming from one of the basement levels, the kind of sound that makes your gut twist before your brain catches up. I remember peeking down the stairwell from the 3rd floor and seeing a staffer nurse, I think running up, her eyes wide with panic. Blood on her scrubs. Not a lot, but enough to raise alarm. Behind her, I could hear the clatter of something banging metal, repeatedly, then a loud groan, not mechanical, something raw, like it came from a throat half-choked on gravel. The hospital went into partial lockdown within minutes. I was told by the floor supervisor that a violent patient had escaped from psych observation. But that didn't explain the alerts I saw flashing on a terminal I passed. Possible biohazard level 2 containment. That was the moment I decided to keep my mouth shut and stay out of the way. I got back to my van and drove straight home. That night, the news barely mentioned anything. Local stations ran stories about protests in Pittsburgh, something about a quarantine at Allegheny General Hospital. National coverage said little, just vague references to a highly infectious encephalitic strain, spreading in some parts of the Midwest. But by Thursday, March 20th, people had started whispering about it. A coworker, Marcus, told me his cousin in Cleveland had seen military vehicles sealing off part of University Circle. Another guy, Joel, said he knew someone at Presque Isle State Park who claimed that they saw helicopters flying low along the shoreline after midnight with no running lights. Then came the radio silence. Literally. On Friday morning, WERG, 90.5 FM, our local college radio stopped broadcasting mid-song. I had the station playing in my garage while repairing my breaker box. One moment it was Zeppelin, the next it was dead air. I flipped to AM channels, static, then I hit WQLN, the NPR affiliate. A looped emergency message was playing. This is a message from the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency. Please remain indoors. Avoid public gatherings. Secure a 2-week supply of water and non-perishable food. No other explanation. That night, Erie felt strange, quieter. Almost like the air had thickened. No car horns, no late-night traffic. Even the bars on Peach Street looked dim. I went out on my small balcony around 10:30 p.m. and watched a state police cruiser roll by slowly with its sirens off, lights flashing in mute red and blue. Saturday, March 22nd, is when the city cracked wide open. I was woken around 5:15 a.m. by a rapid knock at my front door. Groggy, still in my t-shirt and thermal pants, I cracked it open to see Katie, my neighbor from 10B, standing barefoot in a hoodie, clutching her phone with a shaking hand. "Owen," she said, voice hushed. "Something's happening downtown. Look." She showed me a live stream from her brother, who worked night security at the Erie Insurance Arena. The video was jerky but clear enough. The front lobby of the arena was littered with chairs and bodies. Some were still. A man in a black jacket staggered forward and then dropped. Then something else appeared in the frame. It was a person, or used to be, gaunt, bloody, eyes wide, milky. It lunged toward the phone and the feed cut to black. I pulled her into my apartment, locked the door, and turned on my ham radio. I've kept one ever since college, a Yaesu FT857D, rigged with an emergency battery pack and a slim vertical antenna bolted to my balcony railing. Normally, it's just for storm tracking or hobby chats with retirees from upstate New York. That morning, it was chaos. Scrambled transmissions, civilian panic, emergency frequencies blaring with partial codes. I caught something chilling on a repeater channel broadcasting from Pittsburgh. Containment failure at Zone Delta. Multiple aggressors. No response from Firebase South. Orders to fall back to Point Echo. Civilians advised to shelter in place until extraction corridor reopens. That was military jargon. Point Echo wasn't something you heard on the news. That was an evac waypoint designation. I grabbed my bug-out bag. Now, I wasn't a doomsday prepper, but I'd always kept a modest kit, call it a habit from growing up in lake-effect blizzards and grid-down storms. Inside, a .22 Ruger takedown rifle, 150 rounds of subsonic hollow points, 2 days of freeze-dried meals, a life straw, my old work gloves, and a medical pouch with quick clot, gauze, and antiseptic. By noon that day, the power grid started flickering. Whole neighborhoods were dark by 2 p.m. Cell signals became spotty. My last text message to my sister in Buffalo just said, "Stay inside, lock everything. Don't go near anyone acting weird." It never delivered. I barricaded the stairwell leading up to my floor with a washer-dryer and a bundle of rebar I kept for anchoring satellite dishes. I drilled in anchor bolts across the hallway's drywall and wedged the frame with lumber from an old IKEA shelf. It wasn't much, but it would buy me time. By Sunday, March the 23rd, the city was in freefall. The few people I saw from my window looters, some in stolen postal uniforms, weren't looking for help. They were looking for things to take, guns, food, fuel. I stayed off the streets. From my building's rooftop, I could see smoke curling from the direction of the downtown marina. At night, you'd hear screams, or worse, silence, broken only by the rhythmic slap of something heavy hitting metal or glass. It didn't take long to realize the things outside weren't just sick. They were hunting. One night, around 3 a.m., I spotted something through my binoculars from the rooftop. Down near State Street, I watched a group of 4 people, 2 adults, and what looked like teenage kids trying to push a grocery cart through a CVS parking lot. They were being quiet. Careful. One of them had a flashlight, covered with red film to limit visibility. They didn't see the thing crawling out from under the delivery van. It moved fast. Arms twisted like it had too many joints. Eyes white. Mouth wide, jaw slack like it had broken and never reset. It grabbed the woman in front before anyone could scream. The rest of the group ran. The boy dropped the flashlight. It spun across the pavement in slow circles before dying out. The screams didn't last long. I lost sight of them behind the far wall of the store, but I heard it. Not just the initial panic, but the sound that came after. The dragging. The wet, rhythmic tearing that I now knew meant someone wasn't going to get back up. After that, I didn't go up to the roof unless I had to. The city had gone quiet by daylight. No sirens, no helicopters, no emergency broadcasts, just that eerie, low tension that sits behind your ribs like a second heartbeat. I started sleeping in the hallway between my kitchen and laundry closet. No windows, no lines of sight for anything outside. I kept the rifle next to me and wore my boots even while resting. If I had to run, I wouldn't be caught barefoot. By the end of the first week, my apartment complex was nearly silent. I'd counted maybe 3 other units that still had signs of life. On day 8, I finally spoke to someone. Her name was Jenna Feldman, late 20s. She lived down the hall in 12A with her older brother, Cole. I heard them breaking apart a hallway vending machine one morning and quietly eased my door open to see who it was. I almost didn't call out, but I recognized her face from the stairwell weeks before. She had that same exhausted look most of us did now. Dirt under the nails, chapped lips, and the jittery shoulders of someone who hadn't slept a full night in days. We talked in whispers behind a barricaded door in their apartment. They had made a decent shelter, pushed a fridge against the entry, and rigged it with paracord tied to bells from a Christmas box. Cole had a 20-gauge Mossberg shotgun and a basic trauma kit, said he was a paramedic with emergency care before the city collapsed. He told me most of their crew had been redirected to containment duty at a temporary medical triage center down near Liberty Park. That was 10 days ago. He hadn't heard from any of them since. The first real conversation I had with another human being post-outbreak ended with him saying, "We're probably already classified as lost." I didn't know what that meant at first. Then he explained. If the CDC or FEMA marked a zone as non-recoverable, they stopped sending resources. No food drops, no rescue, nothing. The designation was internal, never made public. But people like him, people trained for response, knew the code phrases. And based on the comms they'd heard before their radios went dark, Erie was written off. Over the next 3 days, we worked out a system. 2 knocks and a pause meant, "It's me." 3 meant, "Don't answer." We only met in person once every 2 days in the service stairwell that didn't face the main street. Jenna brought me water filters they'd grabbed from a hiking store early on. I gave them spare batteries and a small roll of soldering wire Cole used to rig solar-powered chargers from garden lights. We weren't friends, not yet. But we trusted each other enough to trade in survival terms. The infected weren't constant. Some nights were quiet, eerily so. Others, you'd hear them roaming, slow shuffling sometimes, but also the distinct, rapid bursts of movement that meant one had caught scent or sound. They didn't moan like the movies. Not always. Some of them clicked a sharp, tongue-against palate sound that echoed through alleys. Cole thought it was a form of echolocation. Said he'd seen something similar in late-stage rabies cases where patients became hypersensitive to sound. I spent my days breaking down appliances for copper, batteries, and spare parts. I had converted an old Makita drill into a hand-cranked generator and used it to charge my shortwave radio. Reception was weak, but I kept trying. I rigged a wire antenna out my window using a length of coax and a metal clothesline. On day 12, I finally picked up a faint transmission out of Canada. A repeater station near Niagara was relaying looped advisories. Proceed north via designated safe routes. Cross-border processing at Fort Erie has ceased. No crossing south. Do not engage with unknown individuals. It confirmed what we feared. The infection had spread. That same night, I heard gunshots 2 blocks east. Not random, sharp, controlled. Semi-automatic, likely military. I climbed the roof slowly, carefully, using the fire escape ladder we'd locked down and scanned with my binoculars. At the intersection of French and 8th, I saw what looked like a National Guard convoy. 6 vehicles, HMWVs, all matte tan, with a large cargo truck trailing behind. They were burning something in the street. I couldn't see what, just smoke, orange flames, and the unmistakable smell of diesel and scorched meat carried by the wind. The next day, they were gone. No broadcasts, no leaflets, no patrols. just more silence. On day 15, everything changed. A man tried to break into the building. Not infected, just desperate. His name was Charlie, and he was already bleeding when I saw him banging on the back entrance the service door near the dumpsters. I watched from my second-floor window. He looked mid-40s, thick beard, work coat soaked in something dark. His voice was hoarse from screaming, but I heard, "Please, please just let me in, they're behind me." I hesitated, maybe for too long. He collapsed before I could even make it down the stairs. Jenna and Cole reached him before I did. They'd seen it too. The poor guy had a bite wound high on his right thigh, almost to the femoral artery. Cole tried to stop the bleeding with a tourniquet made from a belt and zip ties, but it was already too late. Charlie passed out from blood loss. His breath came in shallow, rasping wheezes. Cole injected him with 2 milligrams of midazolam and told me to keep watch. "Even if he wakes up," he said, "we can't keep him." "What do you mean?" "I mean this thing. Whatever it is spreads fast, too fast. You don't survive a bite." But he didn't need to finish the sentence. We all understood what had to be done. Charlie never woke up, at least not alive. His body went still around 2 a.m. We sat in silence for over an hour, just watching, waiting. Then at 3:11 a.m. exactly, he moved. Not naturally. His back arched like something had pulled a wire from inside. Then his head jerked to the side, cracking against the linoleum, and his eyes opened milky white, wide. He exhaled once, sharply, like someone choking on dry air. Then his jaw opened far too wide for a normal human. No breath, no sound. Just that low, wet rasp we'd begun to associate with the things outside. We'd prepared for this. Cole raised his shotgun and fired a single round. 12-gauge buckshot at close range. Immediate cessation of movement. Minimal mess. We wrapped Charlie's body in contractor plastic and dropped it from the fire escape before dawn. The wind carried the smell away. No infected came that day. But the psychological cost was real. Jenna stopped speaking to me for almost a full day. She just sat by the window, tracing the edge of her empty coffee mug, staring out over the parking lot like it held answers. Cole kept his hands busy cleaning gear, checking doors, rotating the solar rigs, but you could see the fatigue setting in. His hands moved by muscle memory, but his eyes were gone, hollowed out from the inside. We had all seen what happened to Charlie, and even though it ended quickly, it changed us. I think the finality of it, the clarity, was worse than any gunshot. There was no ambiguity left. The rules were real now. You got bit, you died, and then you came back as something else. By day 18, supplies started running low. Water wasn't the issue yet. We were siphoning condensation with solar stills and boiling taps stored in every container we could find, but food was dwindling. Even with rationing, the freeze-dried meals I had left wouldn't last more than a week. Cole had managed to scrounge some powdered eggs and oatmeal packets from a camping gear closet at a local church, but that haul was temporary relief. It became clear someone had to make a supply run. We drew straws. I got the short one. The plan was simple. I'd head out early, 1 hour before dawn. The goal was to reach the Rite Aid on 12th and Parade Street. It had been boarded up in the early days, and Cole guessed most of the looters went after larger supermarkets like Giant Eagle or Wegmans first. I carried my Ruger .22 with a screw-on suppressor, loaded with subsonic rounds. The idea wasn't to fight just to be quiet if things went wrong. I also carried a Gerber strong-arm fixed blade on my hip, a crowbar slung across my pack, and a flashlight with a red lens filter. My radio stayed in a padded pouch inside my vest, tuned to a local UHF channel we'd designated for emergencies. I moved fast and low, staying in the shadows, hugging buildings and alleyways. The streets were full of broken glass and windblown debris. A school bus sat crumpled against a light pole on 11th Street, its side pockmarked with what looked like bullet impacts. A tattered child's backpack lay half open on the sidewalk nearby. I didn't look inside. I didn't want to know. I reached the pharmacy by 6:15 a.m. The metal gate was partially rolled down, jammed halfway by what looked like an improvised barricade of pallets and duct-taped signage. Someone had tried to keep things out or in. I slid under the gate, pushing past shattered display racks and broken pill bottles crunching underfoot. My gloves were sticky with expired syrup before I made it 10 feet into the store. I found canned goods behind the pharmacy counter, mostly meal replacement shakes, peanut butter jars, and a sealed crate of protein bars in a back storeroom. Jackpot. I stuffed as much as I could into my pack, careful to balance the weight. I avoided opening the fridge. The smell coming from it made my stomach clench and started heading out just as the first light broke over the horizon. That's when I heard it. A sharp clatter. Not near me, somewhere deeper in the back, near the employee break room. I froze, squatting low between the end cap shelves, eyes locked on the doorway. A shape moved just a flicker in the periphery, but enough to set every nerve in my spine alight. It stepped out. A woman, or what had once been one. Wearing a Rite Aid apron, left arm bent at an unnatural angle, jaw hanging loose with a deep rip under the chin. Her eyes were milky, dead, but her nose twitched slightly, like an animal sniffing. Her head cocked sharply in my direction, and she emitted a low guttural exhale. I backed away slowly, rifle raised, not breathing. One wrong move and I'd have to shoot, and that would bring others. Then another noise. A shuffle of feet behind her. A second infected appeared, this one wearing a USPS jacket, face half gone, black blood crusted around its mouth and throat. The pharmacy employee turned toward it briefly, distracted. I used the moment to slip past a side aisle, crawling behind the end cap and toward the gate. Every step I took, I expected to hear the sprint behind me, the rush, the snarl, but it never came. I didn't stop until I was 4 blocks away, chest heaving behind a rusted-out dumpster behind an abandoned auto shop. I waited there for 20 minutes just to be sure I hadn't been followed. By the time I got back to the apartment complex, the sun was well over the horizon. We ate that day like kings. Jenna even smiled. She made a cake from 2 crushed protein bars, some powdered peanut butter, and a crushed multivitamin tablet for icing. It was ridiculous, and it felt like a holiday. But the good mood didn't last. On day 21, we received a radio transmission. A voice. Male, professional cadence. Broadcast on 146.52 megahertz. Standard emergency ham band. It repeated every 5 minutes. This is Echo Station Delta broadcasting from the Erie Waterworks compound. Safe zone. Secure perimeter. Medical screening on arrival. Food, water, protection. Coordinates are 42.1033 north, 80.1517 west. Repeat. This is Echo Station Delta. Jenna clutched the radio like it was the voice of God. Cole was more skeptical. Too clean, he said. Too scripted. He was right to be cautious. We'd heard false broadcasts before. Lures, traps. Either from opportunists or from groups who'd lost their humanity a long time ago. Still, this one had the ring of military precision, and the coordinates matched the location of Erie Waterworks, right along the Bayfront Parkway where they could plausibly maintain access to clean water and establish a defensible compound. The debate went on for hours. Jenna wanted to go, said we could at least scout it. Cole argued it was too dangerous, that leaving our known perimeter risked everything. I stayed silent at first, weighing options. But eventually I sided with Jenna. We couldn't last another month on pantry raids and rooftop rain traps. Winter was coming, and the temperature had already started dipping below 40 at night. The next morning, we packed. Cole brought the shotgun and a compact medical kit. Jenna had a 9mm SIG-P 365 with 2 spare mags. I stuck with my .22, more for stealth than stopping power. We carried only what we could run with: water, calories, radios, blades, fire-starting kits. I took the lead with my GPS tracker, a handheld Garmin unit that I'd loaded with topographic maps before the network went down. It took 3 hours to reach the compound. We moved along rail lines, ducked through drainage culverts, and stayed off the main roads. Twice, we had to backtrack to avoid large clusters of what Cole called floaters, infected that didn't respond unless provoked, but lingered in large groups, twitching like they were half asleep. By the time we saw the compound, I knew something was off. There were no signs of people, no movement, no guards, no signal flags. The main gate was open. Inside, there were tents military issue, standard canvas GP mediums, with HVAC units powered by solar inverters still humming faintly. Food crates lay scattered. Medical kits. A row of cold boxes still held sealed IV fluids and clean syringes, but there were no bodies, no blood, just the eerie sense that people had left in a hurry. The silence pressed down like a thick fog. No birds, no wind. Even the distant cries or rustles we'd come to expect from the city were gone. It was as if the place had been vacuum sealed in dread. We moved carefully through the perimeter, stepping over loose cabling and empty shell casings near the barricades. That detail stuck with me, the casings. There had been a fight, but there was no wreckage, no signs of an overwhelming breach, no torn fences, no burn marks, just absence. Cole swept each tent with his shotgun shouldered, while Jenna and I checked the med stations and storage crates. Some of the supplies were valuable antibiotics, sterile gauze, MREs still factory sealed. I pocketed 3 chemical heaters and a box of water purification tablets. We moved methodically, all of us too tense to speak much. Then Jenna found the journal. It was bound in camo canvas, dog-eared and creased. Inside, the entries were short, almost like log's initials, vitals, arrival dates. Then the handwriting changed, became erratic. One paragraph stood out in shaky pen strokes. Patient B, 14, collapsed during triage. No bites, no known exposure. Full conversion under observation within 10 hours. Respiration ceased at 2100 hours. Reanimation confirmed 2119. Protocols failed. Containment failed. Do not allow evac. The virus is airborne. God help us. We stood in a triangle, the 3 of us, staring at the page as if it might start bleeding through the ink. Cole exhaled slowly and closed the notebook. "We need to go," he said, voice firm but low. "Now." No one argued. We took only what we could carry: high-value meds, compact rations, 4 solar battery packs from the command tent, and began moving out the way we came. Backtracking through the compound's edge, we stopped just before re-entering the rail corridor. Jenna paused by a set of abandoned crates stacked near a comms trailer. She was digging through them when I heard the first sound. It was subtle. A click, then a soft scraping sound, almost like cloth dragging across gravel. My heart froze mid-beat. I raised my rifle, scanning the fence line just beyond the west tent cluster. It came into view slowly, like it had been crouched and waiting. Male, maybe mid-30s once, dressed in shredded tactical gear. Half his face was blackened with the decay, and his eyes were that same milky white glass I'd come to dread. He moved fast, not stumbling or staggering, but lurching with purpose. A wet cough erupted from his throat, and that triggered something behind him. 2 more stepped out of the trees beyond the compound. We didn't wait to see how many more followed. Cole fired first a single 12-gauge shell that exploded through the center-infected sternum. I dropped the next one with 2 suppressed .22 rounds to the head. Jenna grabbed the gear and sprinted. The exit tunnel we'd entered through was ahead, but the brush around it was alive with movement. More infected. More than we could shoot. More than we could outrun in a straight sprint. We turned hard, cutting through the rear section of the compound and jumping the edge of the decontamination station. We cleared the first fence line and dropped into the rocky slope near the water treatment outflow. It was a brutal climb. Slippery, no cover, noise echoing in every direction. Jenna slipped once, knee slamming into exposed pipe, but Cole yanked her up with one hand. We didn't speak. We just ran. We didn't slow down until we were half a mile north, huddled in a concrete culvert near the bayfront. Our lungs were fire, our legs rubber. I could still hear them behind us, the occasional snarl, the crunch of leaves. But they weren't tracking us directly. Not yet. That night, we slept in shifts inside an old loading dock warehouse behind the Erie Maritime Museum. It was cold, damp, but it had solid concrete walls and a heavy mechanical bay door we managed to wedge shut with a crowbar and pallet jack. None of us talked about the journal. The next day, Jenna had a fever. She didn't say anything at first, but I saw the signs. Shivering, fatigue. She blamed it on the run, the fall, the exposure. But we both knew. Cole checked her vitals, ran a thermometer, and sat back without a word. His face didn't change, just settled into a flat expression like a man flipping an internal switch to standby. "We don't know for sure," Jenna said later that night, voice weak. "It could be nothing." Cole didn't reply. He just went to the corner, checked his shotgun, and started cleaning it again. We stayed there another day, then 2. Her condition worsened. The fever didn't break. She developed tremors. By day 25, her pupils were fixed and unresponsive. She stopped drinking water. On the morning of day 26, she asked me to stay with her when it happened. No crying, no drama, just a calm request. Cole was outside on watch duty, standing at the dock edge with his back to us. She closed her eyes sometime before sunrise. I held her hand for nearly an hour before I noticed the shallow breathing had stopped. I called Cole in. He looked down at her, said nothing, and left the room again. I wrapped her in a tarp, tied it with 550 cord, and helped Cole carry her to the bay. We didn't bury her. We didn't have the tools. We slid her gently into the lake, no prayers, no final words, just silence, followed by the splash of the body entering the water. We left that place at dusk. We returned to our apartment building only to find it had been breached. The barricades were down. Signs of a struggle, spent brass, broken glass, blood, but no bodies. We searched the complex, floor by floor, unit after unit, empty, silent. Then, in my own apartment, I found a message. It was scratched into the wall near my ham radio, shallow, messy, almost illegible. 3 words. "Go north now." It wasn't Cole's handwriting, but someone had been there. The final stretch of this chapter in our lives became a blur of motion. Every day was movement, scouting, scavenging, listening for voices that never came. The sky stayed gray for a week straight. Cold fronts rolled in from Lake Erie, and frost settled in the corners of the windows. Winter was ahead. Shelter was mandatory. Cole and I made it to a small hunting cabin 40 miles northeast, near Chautauqua County, just over the state line into New York. An old acquaintance of his, a prepper named Marvin, had fortified the place before he and his wife tried to make it to Canada. They didn't make it, but the cabin did. Solar panels, water barrels, a root cellar stocked with rice, beans, and jerky in mylar bags. We sealed the place and didn't light fires at night. Cole kept to himself most of the time. I spent hours repairing the signal antenna Marvin had installed, climbing onto the snow-covered roof with bolts in my teeth and freezing pliers in my fingers. I knew if we could get a message out or receive one, we'd at least know we weren't alone. On day 33, a voice finally came through. It was faint, but clear enough. Canadian frequency, French accented English. A female operator calling from somewhere near Toronto. She repeated a series of words 3 times. Refuge, not secure, stay hidden, avoid contact. Western routes compromised, repeat, stay hidden. I wrote those words in thick black marker on the cabin wall. As I sit here now, the radio still humming low, the wind screaming outside, I think about that phrase constantly. It's not just advice anymore. It's survival doctrine. This thing we're facing isn't a phase, it isn't temporary. The virus changed the rules. It's no longer about finding help or waiting for rescue. It's about enduring, evading, observing. The infected are still out there, not just the ones who stumble and moan, but the ones that crouch and wait, watching from ruined windows or storm drains or sewer grates. Some of them are changing, adapting. We've seen it, the way they move, the way they seem to respond to patterns. They're learning. Cole sleeps with his shotgun loaded and across his lap. I keep my boots by the bed and my rifle chambered. Every creak in the wood, every branch in the wind, reminds me that we are not safe. Not really. But we're alive. For now. And as long as I draw breath, I will follow the one rule that has kept me alive through all this. Stay hidden. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.